thanks for being here this morning. With me are numerous members of the San Francisco Police Department's staff. Also present, we have Dr. Joe Marshall, our president, our vice president, Commissioner Thomas Bruso, and Commissioner Jim Hammer. What we're going to do today is we're going to show you about a 7-minute video that has been uploaded on YouTube, Facebook, and there are links that will also go to Twitter. It will also be uploaded, or it is uploaded into our website. And the goal of this process today will be one of educating the community as to why the San Francisco Police Department is trying to have the ability to implement the use of tasers or CEDs. What we will do is we'll show you the video. Then we're going to go, I'm going to go through a very short PowerPoint that is going to talk about the consequences of use of force in altercations in the San Francisco Police Department, talk actually about the cost of workers' comp claims only for 2009. And then Dr. Marshall will say a few words. Oh, I'm sorry, before that, we'll have Sergeant McCloskey, who is one of the sergeants that was involved at an altercation that resulted in injury to 4 officers earlier this year at the Tenderloin, and one of the officers, I believe, is still off duty. Then we're going to turn it over. Dr. Marshall will speak, Vice President Mazuka will speak, and then Commissioner Hammer. And then after that, we'll open it up for Q&A. We will have a separate availability for Spanish-speaking media and Chinese-speaking media after this. So with that,
yes. Marshall was aye. Commissioner Mazuko, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mazuko was aye. Commissioner De Jesus, how do you vote?
No.
De Jesus, no. Commissioner Lee, how do you vote? Lee is no. Commissioner Onek, how do you vote?
Aye.
Onek is aye. Commissioner Pan, how do you vote?
No.
Pan is no. And Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
No.
Pan, or I beg your pardon, Commissioner Hammer is no. So that motion fails 4-3, Mr. President.
We already killing it. Anything to me that lessens the threat of loss of life, I can't wait on that. Like, yeah, you guys can't. I can't wait on that. Go all over. I go all over the country. I go over the world. And this is a life and death issue. This is not a San Francisco issue. This is life and death. And you know, when I deal with one of these parents or one of these folks, when I'm talking to these mothers or these sons or these young men I deal with or these older gentlemen I deal with, they don't say, my son is San Francisco dead. They say he's dead.
I say that he was over 6 feet tall, about 245 pounds. He was recently discharged on parole from rape. They believe he did time in Angola prison in Louisiana. What was unusual about this case was he wasn't there to flee. He had no intention of fleeing us. He wanted to fight us, and specifically me. I've arrested him in the past. Like I said, it's 40 seconds. When I hit that soda machine, which is tilted there next to the 7-Up machine, the only thing I had left was my firearm. And as I was pulling the jacket off my face to get a shot, my hand was reaching for my gun. I was pinned up against that. Now it's fallen soda machine. It was only 40 seconds, but it was a long time. And I mentioned pepper spray tonight. That wouldn't have worked one bit. I mentioned ERIW. That would have been a disaster, bringing a shotgun into that confined environment.
I think it's important to recognize that the taser is not a replacement for the gun. Number one, that there may be other incidents where you have uses of force where the taser could be a very appropriate weapon. Now, clearly in this case, it came very close to the use of deadly force. But frankly, had the officers at the scene had a CED, they would have been able to probably bring this incident to a successful end much earlier, without having the injuries, because I believe they're actually all 4 of you were injured to some level.
Yes, one is still off.
Right, one's still off.
And make no mistake, whenever there is an officer-involved shooting, it affects more than the person who's shot. The decision to use force is not taken lightly by any officer or any department I've ever worked with or sued. And 201, they will tell you that pulling the trigger changes their lives forever.
In human studies, there have been about
500 volunteer exposures in controlled medical settings where they looked at electrocardiograms, which looks at the rhythm of the heart before and after. And in those 500 voluntary exposures, there's never been any significant change in the electrocardiogram, none whatsoever. And timing is clearly everything when the decision to use force is used. 8 of these 15 incidents ended in less than a minute from the officer's arrival. Less than a minute. 13 of the 15 were over in 5 minutes. Clearly, the only force options that count here have to be on the officer, not in the trunk of her cruiser or riding around in the back of a tactical unit in some other part of the city. In Phoenix, which was the first top 10 department to have universal deployment, that means on the belt of every officer, officer-involved shootings dropped 54% in the first year of implementation. That's half. 1 year, first year. San Diego went from 10 in 2005 to 0 in 2007. Not a single discharge of a firearm by a uniformed officer in San Diego. Fort Worth dropped 30%, Oklahoma City 58, Ventura County, California 100, Seattle 100%. Seattle had no officer-involved shootings in the year after they had full deployment of ECDs. Miami, which is a city a lot like San Francisco, went from 24 officer-involved shootings in 2000 to 0 in 2003. Well, what's the lesson then? Departments that have a less lethal option available to their officers, if they couple it with a well-crafted use of force policy, transparency, and robust reporting, end up using less force overall. They use it more intelligently, and they resort to deadly force far less frequently.
So in your opinion, would you think the city and county of San Francisco or the police department would be better off with the use of tasers?
Yes, I do. There are a number of situations where they'd be able to use them and control the situation and not put hands on and certainly not have to use a firearm. Definitely reduced injuries to my officers, and it has resulted in no injuries, no lawsuits, no claims by the persons who were subjected to being tased.
Already knew a lot about this, but I learned some things tonight, and it was just so powerful. I just don't see how we could say, after what we heard tonight, I mean, we're going to get sued by someone who's going to say, you guys have all the information, and you're not using it. I mean, I just don't see how we can sit here and not say, let's look at it more closely.
So I don't quite get that. You know, we looked at these numbers. We looked at who they adversely impact. You looked at who's adversely impacting them. For me and the folks and the young people I deal with, anything that increases the chance that they will live, I'm fine. All we're asking this man to do to me is bring back. We can still vote the thing up or down. We don't have to accept it. Almost curse. A darn thing that he says. So I don't get the waiting piece. I just go ahead and bring something back. We can do our studies in the interim. But to me, somebody might get shot tomorrow, and I'm not cool. I'm talking on the commission. I'm not happy with that.
And as a study that we presented to you indicates, the men and women of the San Francisco Police Department have been very disciplined in the way that they use force, certainly in the way that they use deadly force. They deserve the support of this commission. They deserve the support of this community. And frankly, the community that we serve also deserves to have a police department that has more tools in the bag so that some of these incidents that we're engaging, we can reduce the likelihood of injury. In some of the pointers that we have tried to make already, one is that we know over and over again by studies that have been conducted by different entities that CEDs reduce officer injuries and they reduce suspect injuries. If you notice the annotation in this particular slide, we talk about Police Executive Forum research in September of 2009. PERF is one of the most respected police think tanks in the United States. They were commissioned by the National Institute of Justice to look at the use of CEDs. They compared departments that were using CEDs to those that were not. And a scientific analysis of this work, they came to an unbiased conclusion that when CEDs are used appropriately, they reduce injuries. Now understand, this was not an industry-based study. This was a study funded by the National Institute